Okay, I will, I usually wait a second before it actually gets started, so I guess I can get started now. So it's, welcome to the November 7th, 2024 meeting of the Economic Community Development, Committee. And with us tonight are council members, Josh Goldstein, Jim Frayer, Heather Dunn, Jalen Seed, Barbara Smith, Darlene Young, and then also in addition, in attendance, Councilmember Dewan Wiggins and Councilmember Ann Wennerstrand are here, along with the Mayor's Chief of Staff, Tom Livingston. So before I guess we get into the agenda, is there anyone here who wants to make a participate publicly to the council? That's not in English. Does anyone want to speak to the committee? I see one participant. If you want to make public comment, please raise your hand. Going once, going twice. I think I'm going to close public participation. And under administration approval of the minutes for September 19th, 2024 special meeting, do I have a motion? Councilmember Frayer. Does anyone have any corrections, additions, deletions, any issues with the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any abstentions? Councilmember Smith abstains. Councilmember Smith abstains. Okay. All right. So I see. I think I just saw Jim Travers log on.
Yes,
Yes,
I'm so
there he is.
sorry. I was having difficulty getting on, and I'm having difficulty with my camera. So
That's okay. I'm glad you're here
so
because
sorry. So
we're
sorry.
started. So, Jim, are you ready to get started, or do you need to?
I am ready to start. Yes, I am.
Okay, got it. Okay. So we're gonna do A1. I'll read it in. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into any and all project authorization letters and other documents required by Connecticut DOT needed for expenditure of funds under the Connecticut Department of Transportation's Urban Action Grant Program for improvements to Richards Avenue and West Cedar Street as part of state project number noted. Count numbers noted. Do I have a motion for this item? Councilmember Smith. Jim, I mean, there's a very good memo explaining the project, but I figure it's worth doing a few words because this is a big deal. And I know people have been, sort of talking about this for a long time. Jim, we can't hear you.
So you can't hear me?
We couldn't hear you for a second there.
Okay. All right. So
Now we can hear you.
Okay, great. Perfect. So this is the first part of a two-phase grant that we have. So this grant was we received this grant as part of a request with Senator Duff. And so this will be $1 million that will allow us to use for the design, right? And all the expenditures associated with that. So it allows us to get moving on. And then we were able to get a secondary grant that will actually work for the construction that will come back after we get the design. So this is the first phase of this. I think that we have many folks in the community who have been eagerly looking for this. It will take a little while for us to get there and go through the whole process. But this first process will allow us to be able to engage with a consultant to begin the design. And that design will consist of community meetings as a requirement of the grant, but is also just a requirement of the way that we normally do business. But there'll be community meetings throughout the process to bring the community along. Since this will, truly be like the first real roundabout that we have in Norwalk.
And I think it's worth noting, this is a complete streets project.
This will be a complete streets project, as all of them will be. So this really speaks to what complete streets are, right? So this is so the phase that we have here is it's the roundabout, and then we'll also be looking at a road diet that exists at the college itself, that will serve as the gateway into the community, and really add a lot of beauty, in that with narrowing the travel lanes, removing the on-street parking that's becomes really wide in the evening. It becomes a gateway for speeding through the neighborhood. Give us a tree-lined street, a shortened crossing distance connecting the two college campuses there. I think so. So this, and then we also get bike connections in here, and then sidewalk connections to recently installed sidewalks on Richards Avenue.
Do any council members have any questions about this item? Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Jim, for that information. I just have, this is a question that some people have been asking, and I understand that everything is dovetailing well, but I think it's worth just maybe highlighting a little bit publicly, which is, how you're working together, and dovetailing with the Public Works paving project on Richards Avenue.
Yeah.
We can't hear you again, Jim.
There you
are.
Okay, I don't know why it's cutting in and out, oddly. We meet regularly with DPW to review the status of both of our projects. We worked together on this one. We made some decisions on what we would do. Now, DPW had on their paving list to have this Richards Avenue paved, and that was recently repaved. And we made the decision to continue through the intersection on that because it is when we have city funded projects, they're easier to implement because it's our funds and we control them and we get to do it. For grant processes for this, we actually have to respond to the DOT for each step. So the process takes longer, right? And this process will probably, from the time that we're here today, probably take 24 months before we actually get to do the install. So we didn't want the neighborhood to have really great pavement, go to an area that had really poor pavement conditions. When we look at the intersection work, that will all change, yes, and that was a short time. But when we look at our work on Richards itself, a lot of it is a road diet, so we're able to use the existing road that's there, and we'll be able to cut that in and get that. But we really felt that it would be a disservice to, well, there's two things. One, it would be a disservice to the residents not to have a complete road, given the fact that it is 2 years out, right? And that the poor pavement conditions would only deteriorate further in there. But also to have the contractor stop and start in those sections, it would probably have cost more money rather than just billing it out all the way through.
Okay, that's really helpful. And, and I think that, can give all of us the opportunity to, when residents ask that question, we have now your answer. So that's
all right. No, we look at them, really in a lot of detail to make sure that, we are good stewards of, whether it's city tax dollars or whether it's the grant funding that we get. We want to maintain, stewards, you're good stewards of public money.
Of course. And you do such a great job of that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jim.
Councilmember Freyer.
Thank you, Jim. That was a great explanation. In the fact that we're going to be not starting this for about 24 months, is that it? Will that have any impact on the bridge construction on West Cedar?
So I think, look, ideally, I would have loved to been able to do it at the time that the bridge is closed, that we have, we already have, that reduction. We continue to work with them when we can coordinate it, it can. It's just unfortunate that, with grant funding, we can move things and we can advance things along relatively quickly, but it has to go through a stringent DOT review before they allow us to go to the next step. So ours are, 1, 2, 3, pause, right? Give it to them, wait for comments back, respond to comments, do 4, 5, 6, pause, right? So it does take a little bit longer. But regardless of whether it would, if we're able to negotiate it to occur at the same time of the bridge, it would be great because we already have a reduction of traffic on West Cedar, right? If it doesn't happen that way and it goes afterwards, we know the project limits of the bridge. We know where we are. We're not going to negatively impact anything that has to do with the bridge, and we will still have traffic flow through the area. So I think we're comfortable that we're going to be able to make that work. But it may be that the community is in construction a little bit longer because we may finish one and then lead into the next.
Yeah. But I guess there will be continual traffic going through the cross section during construction. So in other
Yes.
words, we're not going to have to detour the people because I mean the detour for the bridge is kind of onerous.
Yeah, so I don't think we're going to see the level of detour with the bridge because we will always work to try to maintain, whether it's one-way alternating traffic that gets a little bit longer of a delay that gets you through there.
Yeah.
But we think that we will be challenging the designer to work with in a situation because we recognize that there's not an easy route around that area, right?
Right. Okay, good. I think it's just
I would
important that-
imagine there wasn't a whole lot of crossover between the paving that would have to be redone for the roundabout and the fact that, I mean, a lot of that paving goes all the way down
Right.
a big
Yes.
chunk of Richards. I mean,
It's the entirety of Richard.
it's
yeah.
the entirety of Richards. So I think it's that context is also worth noting considering it doesn't say in here, Jim, but the size of the roundabout, I don't think I mean, it's big, but it's not, it's a small percentage of the work that was done.
Right. So the roundabout, there'll be a little bit of the school property that we will gather an easement on to make that happen. But that's the only property that's affected. Otherwise, the roundabout really fits within, the majority of the intersection that exists there today.
Okay. Okay, does anyone have any additional questions about this item? If not, then I will call for a vote. All in favor of taking this to the council? That is unanimous. Okay. Item 2. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to execute any and all agreements and other documents necessary to accept and receive the benefits of the EECBG program, technical assistance voucher in the amount of $144,600. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Freyer. Jim? Your mic again.
Can you hear me again?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah. I don't know why that delay happens. I'll work with IT tomorrow. This is a new one, right? I got a new laptop, and we're having all the challenges of a new laptop. My old one was slow, but at least my voice worked. So this one is a little bit different in terms of grants. So this is no intake of cash from the city and no disbursement of cash to a vendor. So this one is all run throughout the program, and where they pay the consultant directly. We just get a report at the end, and we're the recipient of that benefit, and then we will work with them in an analysis to determine what would be the best places within the city and the quantity that should be there to support EV charging as we go forward. Right. So this is the grant is more just the planning and then will allow us understand where we would want to go, where would be the places to go, how many would be the quantity that we should put there. So it's more of that planning. So this is paid for by state agency directly, no cash transfers in hands with the city at all. Just at the end of the project, we get it, but we just need the mayor to sign an agreement that we're going to work with him on putting where those EV chargers are, right? No commitment to put the EV chargers in after it. So we have no financial obligation to extend after this. But we will have an opportunity just to know where they would be the best used within the city.
And just to be clear here, are we talking about EV chargers for city vehicles or just EV chargers, period?
EV chargers, period.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure because we're not
Yep.
talking about the city's fleet. We're talking about EV chargers for the incoming, the upcoming influx of EV vehicles used by people as that market becomes bigger
Right.
and more saturated over
For,
time.
for our residents and visitors where they would be best suited to meet their needs.
Mhm. Jim,
Will that estimate what the number of units there would be?
Yes.
Or are they just going to give us
So
location?
it will tell it, so the grant is really going to give us guidance, right? To tell us what would be the best locations for these, and at those locations, what would we anticipate being the quantity of chargers that we should put there to meet demand, right? And they're going to be looking at population. They're going to be looking at, what is the average daily traffic on the road? What's the likelihood of somebody, stopping there, and getting them, what do we have for EV chargers, already currently, registered within the city? So all of those take into consideration, a look there. But yes, it would be not only location, but what their recommendation is for us to start with the number of chargers.
Would it all be on public property or be a city property that they're looking at?
So I think they're gonna. So I don't know that we always have the luxury of having all of them on city property. I think some of the opportunities that I've seen with the grants, they would occur on city property, whether they would be city parking lots or city parking garages, or recommendations for on-street parking locations that could be converted into charging locations. But I think they may also look at where there's no on-street chargers necessary. They'll recognize that where there is no city parcels readily available, but there's a demand that they forecast, that they'll recognize that is in this general area, right, little circle, that we should look at that, and it would also help for private development of EV chargers as well.
Mhm. Okay, good.
yeah, and just in terms of timing, this gets passed next week, assuming it gets passed, what happens next? Like how long do they expect this to take?
So we will have I anticipate that we're going to have, the report in the early part of next year. So the early part of 25, that we'll have it back. So say in the first half year, right? It would give us a little bit more of a window that get them. But we have the form ready for the mayor to sign, just needs the council approval for him to, put his John Hancock or Mayor Harry Rilling on it. And we'll have that right out to them.
Okay.
Good.
Chair, I'd like to
Yeah.
ask a question.
Of course, go for it.
Hi, Jim.
Hi.
So I'm wondering, and maybe I should know this, but has this been taken into consideration with the upcoming development that's going to take place in South Norwalk, particularly the other side of the train station that's on Martin Luther King, and then even the new development, the one on Mulvoy, I think it's Mulvoy, that leads to the train station. Has this conversation been had with these folks?
So we haven't had any conversations about where our development or where our growth is likely to occur due to pending or approved applications. Because we haven't had an opportunity to start the process yet because the mayor hasn't signed the form. Once the form's signed, we will work with them throughout the entire process. They'll be interviewing, city staff, including planning and zoning, so that we make sure that, where we see, what they're going to be looking at is where growth has occurred, where growth is likely to occur, but also, as we look at, at advancing TODs in the city, that they're going to be an important part of infrastructure, as we move forward. So yes, they would be including in all of those.
And I'm not implying that it should already be done. I'm asking if the questions were asked even prior to this, just in the development idea about EVs, right? Electrical chargers in communities. South Newark is just growing and there's not a lot of space. So I think we need to at least think outside of the box and maybe have those conversations now. I'm not saying that the city would have to pay for it, because you did mention that it could possibly be on private property, but having those conversations before we get to the point where there's no more land, everything is done, and then someone would then have to go back in and then pair up to put something in, is what I'm saying. And so
No, and I
even,
think-
you know what I mean? So I was just wondering if that was a conversation that was what had with folks. Separate from this, what you're.
Separate from this, we've had
Yeah.
some, I think, so separate from this grant. This
Mhm.
is your
Oh, you're going in and out. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. This is annoying. I'm probably more annoying for you, right? But going into this phase, this was an internal conversation that we had that we really need to take a proactive look at where we need to have this development. That's what precipitated this grant to begin with, right? We will have those conversations about where that growth, when they start to do the analysis. But we have looked, we continue to work with the parking authority as it relates to facilities. We've contracted with a vendor there who, they do the monitoring of the station and will come back with a recommendation to us if we should add additional ones. Now, we don't have them inside the train station, and it's in this train station parking garage itself. It was on the parking lot side that was removed with the recent remediation that is currently ongoing over there. But that's kind of what we said is like, we really need to take more global approach, a global look at what, where this demand should be, rather than making our best guess. We had this opportunity within the state to apply for this grant that they would give us the guidance, in a statistic, really going for the people who are looking at this and understand, where this, what the emerging need is going to be. But all of those could be considerations, as we move forward. But I do think it was a proactive approach on the city to make sure that we get them in the right place.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone have any additional questions on this item? If not, then I will call for a vote. All in favor? Okay. I think that's everyone. Jalen, did you vote? There we go. Okay. All right, that passed unanimously. Last item on the list. Authorize the mayor, Harry W. Rilling, to enter into a maintenance agreement with the Connecticut Department of Transportation for State Project 102-375, East Norwalk connectivity enhancements for non-standard items. Account number noted. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Smith. Jim.
All right. Can you hear me before I
Yes.
start? Okay, good. Now it works, right? So, a little bit of a longer story with this. So DOT is doing work with the walk bridge, as you know, around Cemetery Circle. They need to do, considerable amount of work. With a new water line, new sewer line that's going to have to go through the project. Their initial intent was that they would replace what is there, right? And then we looked at a East Norwalk TOD study that was done prior and had a plan for the area, and we worked with them to implement that plan. So they're going to, when it's all said and done, we're simply not just ripping up the road and replacing it. We're actually making it better. We're putting the correct sidewalks in, the amenity zones that are there. This will have a sidewalk all around the cemetery. It will have crosswalks.
Streets.
With complete streets. It will have crosswalks. Imagine that we have a historic cemetery with no crosswalks to get to us, right? So it will have crosswalks. The travel lanes will be right size. We'll have bike lanes that go through there. With that, there are things that are non-standard items for a typical DOT project, such as marking, parking stalls are a non-standard DOT item, so that falls upon the municipality for maintenance. Bike lane markings are non-standard for DOT. The maintenance of those, if the city wants them, that would be onto the city. Any special textured crosswalks that we put in, are a non-standard item for DOT, and would be maintenance of the city. and that, these are just typical things to do. But we believe they're important because they add to the betterment of the project at the end of the day. And so we would just ask you to allow us to enter into this maintenance agreement. We've already had a conversation with DPW. Vanessa and Chris and I met with DOT up at District 3 talking about the maintenance of this particular area. Chris expressed no concern of this is moving forward, and any markings would get covered under our department's markings budget.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone have any questions about this? Okay, pretty quick. Jim covered it all. All right, then I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? I think that's everyone. Heather? I don't know if Heather voted. I just want to make sure.
I'm gonna abstain. I haven't seen the project yet. Sorry.
Okay, so that was, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4. So everyone voted in favor except for Heather, who abstained. So for the minutes.
Right.
Okay. That is it in our agenda. The only thing to note before asking for the last motion is to say that obviously as budget season begins, I know that we were talking about having sort of a discussion about sort of capital budget and budget, sort of just an early preview of especially some capital budget considerations. That's a next month thing. Frankly, I forgot to put it on this month's agenda, so my bad. With that, do I have a motion? Councilmember Freyer. It's a motion to adjourn. All right, everyone.
Good night. All in favor, right? Are we
Yeah, I know.
Yes. Good night.
All right. Thanks,
Good night.
everyone. Have a good
Night.
night.
Thank you very
Good
much.
night, everyone.